Nicotine overdose. On December 12, 2024, Danny Clark went to bed at his home in Westchester, Pennsylvania, after an evening out with his girlfriend and friends. The 34-year-old restaurant manager had switched from smoking 1 pack of cigarettes per day to vaping 14 months earlier, believing it was a safer alternative. He had no idea his body was slowly accumulating dangerous levels of nicotine. Danny used a 50-milligram nicotine disposable vape pen approximately every 10 minutes throughout each day, consuming large clouds per session. The concentration was 5 to 10 times stronger than typical vape pens. On the night of December 11th, family members noticed he had slurred speech, poor coordination, and felt sick to his stomach, though he had consumed only a limited amount of alcohol. The next morning, Danny's family found him unresponsive in bed. They immediately called 911. Emergency medical services transported him to the hospital, where initial toxicology showed nothing unusual. No drugs were detected, and only a limited amount of alcohol appeared in his system. The case was classified as unexplained death. Days later, Dr. Neil Hoffman ordered extended nicotine level testing on tissue and blood samples after learning Danny had been a heavy vapor. The results showed nicotine levels 2 to 3 times higher than a normal heavy cigarette smoker would have. The coroner signed the death certificate, listing the cause as heart attack caused by nicotine arrhythmia, marking the first vaping-induced nicotine overdose death in his 50-year career. Exploding vape pen. On May 5, 2018, Talmadge D'Elia went to his bedroom at his family home in St. Petersburg, Florida, to use his vape pen during the morning hours. The 38-year-old television producer was an experienced vapor who used mechanical mod-style devices. He had modified the device, though it remained unclear if this contributed to what happened next. The battery in the mechanical vape pen suddenly exploded with significant force. Metal shrapnel shot directly into his head, with at least 2 pieces confirmed to have lodged in his skull. The explosion also ignited a fire in the bedroom that spread rapidly and destroyed much of the room. His family discovered Talmadge in the burning bedroom and immediately called for help. Fire and emergency medical services arrived to find him already deceased. His body was taken to the county medical examiner for autopsy. The examination revealed metal projectiles from the pen embedded in his skull, and burns covering approximately 80% of his body. The blast had occurred with projectile-level force, turning a sleek consumer device into a lethal weapon in seconds. Investigation revealed the device was unregulated and imported from the Philippines under the Smoke E Mountain brand. At the time, no FDA oversight existed for such products, making this the first known United States death from an exploding vape pen. Severed carotid artery. On the afternoon of January 27, 2019, William Eric Brown arrived at Smoke and Vape DZ in Fort Worth, Texas, seeking help with how to use a mechanical mod vape pen. The 24-year-old licensed electrician had purchased the device elsewhere and needed guidance. The shop manager explained how the device worked, but Brown did not purchase anything from the store. Brown returned to his car, parked in the lot in front of the shop, to try using the pen for the first time. The battery exploded with enough force to melt plastic inside the vehicle and send metal shards into his face and throat. Metal pierced his lip, face, and lodged deep in his throat and neck area. Blood loss began immediately. The shop manager saw Brown bleeding heavily in the parking lot and called 911. Paramedics arrived, stabilized him, and transported him to JPS Hospital. Brown arrived conscious and able to speak that evening, but x-rays revealed a 3-inch piece of jagged metal lodged in his throat. Doctors were uncertain about immediate surgery and decided to wait until Monday or Tuesday to remove the metal. Over January 28th and 29th, Brown's condition deteriorated as the metal shard continued damaging the carotid artery. He was placed in a medically induced coma. A massive stroke occurred, followed by brain herniation. He died on January 29th, just 3 weeks before his 25th birthday. His death was the second confirmed United States fatality from an exploding vape pen, prompting his family to pursue wrongful death claims. Mother's secret addiction. For years, Mary Carey Davis had been a casual smoker and occasional vapor at her home in Georgia, believing e-cigarettes were a safer alternative. The 52-year-old dental office employee and mother of 5 kept the extent of her addiction hidden from her family. During a trip to California with family in summer 2018, she was exposed to cannabis vape cartridges containing THC and enjoyed the experience. After returning to Georgia, Mary began seeking out THC vape cartridges through illegal channels, as THC was not yet legal in the state. From late 2018 through summer 2019, she secretly vaped THC cartridges alongside her nicotine vaping. Her family had no idea. In late summer 2019, she began experiencing severe symptoms, including shortness of breath, chest pain, and uncontrollable vomiting. In early September, Mary sought medical evaluation. A chest X-ray showed some concerning findings, but doctors were puzzled. 2 days later, a second X-ray revealed a dramatic change. Her lungs were now massively infiltrated with white substance, indicating fluid, inflammation, and infection. Her daughter Mary Margaret later stated those clouds of white infiltration were not present on the X-ray taken just 2 days before. On September 5th and 6th, 2019, Mary's condition crashed. She was hospitalized with failing lungs. Doctors identified the presentation as EVALI, specifically tied to her THC vaping. On September 6th, Mary died at the hospital from respiratory failure caused by EVALI, likely triggered by vitamin E acetate or other adulterants in black market THC cartridges. By the way, if you find this informative, I cover stories like these regularly. Consider subscribing if you'd like to see more. Now back to the video. Young man gasping. In November 2019, Kyle Boyd went to bed seemingly healthy at his home in Orlando, Florida. The 28-year-old worked helping those with addiction and had been a heavy vapor, using high-nicotine vape products regularly for an extended period. No prior respiratory or cardiac symptoms had been reported. On the morning of approximately November 12th, his mother and stepfather found him unresponsive and gasping for air in his bedroom. The family immediately called 911. Emergency medical services arrived and transported Kyle to a local hospital, where he was immediately placed on life support due to severe respiratory distress. His condition continued to deteriorate despite aggressive medical intervention. He suffered 2 episodes of cardiac arrest while hospitalized and never regained consciousness after the first arrest. Medical tests confirmed he was brain dead. CAT scans and X-rays showed his lungs were completely whited out, filled with fluid from severe pneumonia. Hospital staff and pulmonologists concluded the pneumonia was more than likely caused by vaping, based on the presentation. Complete toxicology screening came back negative for all drugs and alcohol. The only substance involved was nicotine from vaping. The family sent a lung biopsy sample to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for further analysis. His funeral was held at St. Joseph's on Alafaya Trail in Orlando, with donations requested to Matthew's Hope in Winter Garden to honor his memory and support addiction recovery services. Deathbed warning. For approximately 4 years, from 2021 through 2025, Mohed Radzi Mustafa had been a consistent vapor in Malaysia. The 44-year-old ex-airman and motorcycle enthusiast known as Abang Rock on TikTok used vaping to manage work-related stress. He vaped while riding his motorcycle, during work, and in social settings, building a following of tens of thousands on social media. In late April 2025, Mohed Radzi suddenly decided to quit vaping cold turkey and stopped using vape pens completely. Within 2 days of quitting, his breathing became severely compromised. He developed acute respiratory distress as his lungs could not function without the nicotine his body had become dependent on. Around April 26th or 27th, his condition worsened rapidly, and he rushed to a hospital in Kuala Lumpur, where he was admitted to the ICU. Doctors found he had severe lung abscesses, and his heart was in critical condition. Chest tubes were inserted to drain pus and fluid from his lungs. On April 28, 2025, while in the ICU with 2 chest tubes draining yellow pus, Mohed Radzi recorded a 6-minute video on his TikTok account. In the video, he warned that vaping was very, very dangerous, and that vapor from vaping had destroyed his lungs. He stated his heart was only functioning at 3% and pleaded with everyone not to vape. The video spread rapidly across Southeast Asia, shocking thousands who saw the once healthy, charismatic influencer bedridden and hooked to chest tubes. Over the next 8 to 9 days, despite maximum medical support, his organ systems continued to fail. On May 7, 2025, Mohed Radzi died in the hospital from acute heart failure and respiratory failure, secondary to vaping-induced lung damage. Bilateral pneumothorax. Around age 16 in 2013, Rosie Christofferson began smoking traditional cigarettes as a social smoker in Birkenhead, Merseyside, United Kingdom. In late 2014, at age 17, she switched to heavily flavored e-cigarettes with intense flavors like bubblegum, coconut, and cherry, believing they were a safer alternative. She vaped regularly as a high school footballer and drama enthusiast. In late 2014 and early 2015, Rosie developed chest pain and fatigue. She went to her doctor, who examined her and diagnosed what he believed was a pulled muscle. No imaging was ordered initially. Despite the diagnosis, her chest pain and fatigue worsened over the following weeks. Her energy dropped, and she began noticing her breathing was labored during normal activities. On the afternoon of February 14, 2015, Rosie suddenly collapsed on the street in Birkenhead on Valentine's Day. Bystanders immediately called 999. Paramedics arrived quickly, treated her, and transported her to Arrow Park Hospital. Emergency department doctors performed imaging and discovered bilateral spontaneous pneumothorax, meaning both of her lungs had collapsed simultaneously. Rosie was placed on life support, but her condition did not improve. She became brain dead. Approximately 1 week later, her family made the difficult decision to withdraw life support. She was pronounced dead just before what would have been her 19th birthday, and her mother has since become an outspoken advocate against vaping. Dual organ collapse. In 2023, a 22-year-old Filipino male from Laguna arrived at Philippine General Hospital in Manila after 1 week of developing concerning symptoms. He had been vaping daily for approximately 2 years, had no known health conditions, had never smoked cigarettes, did not drink alcohol, had no history of illicit drug use, and had not been infected with COVID-19. He had developed a productive cough, hemoptysis, fever, and vomiting that seemed like a respiratory infection. 2 days before hospital admission, after engaging in sports activity, he suddenly experienced severe chest pain along with shortness of breath, excessive sweating, and muscle pain. He arrived at the emergency room in acute distress. An EKG showed ST segment elevation in the anterior wall, indicating an active heart attack. Blood troponin levels were extraordinarily elevated at 3,786 times normal, one of the most severe cardiac injury markers documented. An echocardiogram showed a dilated left ventricle and severely weakened heart muscle with an ejection fraction of 30 to 35%, indicating acute cardiomyopathy. Chest x-rays showed consolidation pneumonia pattern, but all culture studies came back negative for bacteria, viruses, and fungi, confirming EVALI rather than infection. Coronary angiography revealed his left anterior descending artery and right coronary artery were completely blocked by chronic plaques, representing two-vessel coronary artery disease in a 22-year-old with no risk factor. Doctors performed angioplasty to open the LAD artery, achieving temporary blood flow restoration. However, his blood pressure dropped dangerously, hemoptysis resumed, and oxygen levels plummeted. He was placed on mechanical ventilation and powerful cardiac support medications, but died 3 days after admission. The Philippine Department of Health issued major warnings, and the case was published in the international peer-reviewed journal Respirology Case Reports as the first documented EVALI-linked death in the Philippines. If this was informative, consider subscribing so you don't miss future content. Thanks for watching.